While moving west, the U.S. saw that Mexico controlled a large area of land. The U.S. then wanted this land so it can expand its borders to the Pacific, but Mexico refused and later went into war with the U.S.
This was the war that Abraham Lincoln called unconstitutional, and Ulysses S. Grant labeled one of the most unjust wars ever waged. But the president who waged it, James Polk, believed the U.S. had ample cause. Known as Mr. Polk's War, its goal was to expand America's border to the Pacific by taking nearly half of Mexico's territory. It was the first battle for West Point graduates Ulysses S. Grant, George McClellan, and Robert E. Lee.
The Mexican-American War was the conflict over Mexico's northern territories. America wanted these territories so it could expand its border to the Pacific.
The idea is that the Americans, in a sense, are God's new chosen people. And He has intended for them to settle North America. It isn't just them going, we would like to have this land, but God intends us to have this land. And so that's a pretty powerful mandate.
Talking about God's plan gives you cover to do what you want.
The reason for Polk's campaign was to expand the land of the U.S. as much as possible. He believed that they had the God-given right to have whatever land they wanted. But this idea isn't true, according to Mexicans and many Americans. A small group of American soldiers were in the southern part of Texas, while Mexican troops were aiming at them. Every Mexican thought that they were in Mexican territory. Suddenly, Mexican troops fired at them, killing 11. When news of the attack reached President Polk, he demanded that Congress declare war because Mexican troops shed American blood on American soil.
He is absolutely lying. He lies about American blood that was shed in American territory. The whole declaration is full of lie.
President James Polk sent a representative to go and talk to the Mexican officials, hoping to buy Mexico's northern territories for $30 million. He realized that he needs to intimidate and bully Mexico into selling their land. But Mexico refused to take the offer.
Polk approached this whole problem confident that if he bullied Mexico enough and gave them enough money, they would sell their land. And that, I think, is a window into the way that Polk thought about Mexicans generally. Essentially, he despised them.
After declaring war, the U.S. decided to invade Mexico and give them a beating until they surrender or sell their northern land. The U.S. Army moved into Mexico where they encountered high resistance from the Mexicans. When the Americans moved south of the Rio Grande, Mexicans immediately opened fire on advancing American opposition. Mexico was always the one defending. The Mexican army would wait for the American soldiers to come while they fired at them from above, from buildings and hills. Mexico had strongholds to help destroy and kill advancing American soldiers. The fatality rate was the highest than in any war in American history. Many weapons used to defend against the Americans were cannons, rifles, and hand-to-hand combat. But battle after battle, the Americans seemed impossible to stop. That every battle that the Mexicans were in, they lost. Finally, the American army reached Mexico City, where once again Mexicans tried to defend, but failed. but failed. It seemed that it wasn't fair because the U.S. attacked the weaker nation to get what they wanted. The U.S. Army entered Mexico City, hoping that they can sign a peace treaty.
When the American army arrived, the only Mexicans remaining in the city center were common citizens who were amazed at the sight of the troops and an American flag flying over the Mexican National Palace.
The people were absolutely mad, humiliated, and wanted by all means to attack the American invaders. So it was a bloody occupation of downtown Mexico City.
Polk sent Representative Nicholas Trist to finally make peace with the Mexicans by signing a peace treaty. On February 2nd, 1848, Nicholas Trist met with the Mexican official Manuel de la Peña in the city of Guadalupe Hidalgo and signed the treaty, and that the U.S. government pays $15 million to the Mexican Republic, and that the U.S. receives Mexico's northern territories, and that the Rio Grande was the border between the U.S. and Mexico.
The Mexican-American War proved significant for both nations in many ways. For the U.S., the casualty rate was the highest of any war in the nation's history. Nearly 30% of American soldiers who had fought in the conflict died, most not from battle wounds, but disease.
The war was finally over. Polk was amazed of his victory, as well as Americans. But the way that this war was waged made people upset, because Polk does bully a weaker nation into war to get what they want. And people are amazed about how little attention the Mexican-American War is paid in the study of U.S. history.
Historians marvel at how little relative attention is paid to the Mexican-American War in the study of U.S. history.
Part of the reason is that the Civil War bulldozed the memory of the Mexican-American War. But I think the more fundamental reason is that the Mexican-American War does not fit well with our idea about what American history is really all about.
The long healing process of relations between the U.S. and Mexico will now begin. But the Mexican-American War has really changed both countries, and it is a war that will never be forgotten.